Thank you, Amy, as always, for spearheading this wonderful group. And thank you, Zev, for your professionalism and expertise, always done with such love. Really appreciate it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I could make a whole list, as I'm sure you could, of words in our vocabulary that are so overused that they lose their meaning, right? The word love comes to mind. Does anyone know what love means anymore? I don't know. The word peace also comes to mind. A peace treaty here, a peace treaty there. What type of peace? Is peace just the absence of war? Or is it really peace? One of these words, I think, is the word friends or friendship, right? Facebook, I think, completely butchered that word. Facebook friends. Can you friend me? What does that mean? Does that mean that now we are like best buddies, we can hang out and we can really speak to one another all of the secrets that we have? Or does that just mean that we can poke one another from time to time and like our pictures and comments? What does that mean? We don't know what it means anymore. And therefore, really, I thought that this topic that was suggested by some of you is really so vital, so crucial, because it's one of these words that really needs to be revived in order for our own friendships, our own relationships to truly blossom. So, you know, there are many studies. Maybe I should start this way. But I'd like to, again, this should be much more of a discussion than anything else. Like I've said so many times before, I think that's the only way to really learn. If you teach me, I teach you. The word for learning and teaching in Hebrew is the exact same word, lilmod, lilamed, for a reason, for that reason. You can't really learn if you don't hear from the people you're learning with. So I do want to hear from you, and if you had maybe from one or two or three of you, if you had to define friendship in one specific way, what way would that be? Yes, please, Randy.
Trust.
Trust. It's a good word. Trust. Okay, what else?
Help.
Sorry? Help. Okay, good. Very good. Trust, help. I like these words. Yes. Connection. All right, good. Empathy. Love it. Linda? Soulful. Okay. Geraldine? Time. You mean the sacrifice, the devotion of time. Good. Yes, Irene? Unconditional. Good. Okay. Loyal. All right, very good. Truthful. Good. Truthful. Okay. I love all the words that were proposed, and I think that really they come together in 5 specific ingredients that I want to present to you that I think Judaism presents in general in all sorts of places. 5 ingredients to this magical notion of friendship. Let's start with the very first one, and I call it the art of listening. But it's really based on this verse that comes directly from our Torah, from the book of Deuteronomy. It's really the only verse that speaks of the word friend in the Torah. So we ought to pay attention to it very closely. Does anyone want to read the introductory verse? Then I want to develop this idea of what it means. Please, if your brother, does anyone want to read this specific verse? Again, it's the only verse in the Torah that speaks of friendship. Friendship as it is. Chaver. Uses that word in Hebrew. Anyone? Please, Joyce, go for it.
If your brother, the son of your mother, or your son, or your daughter, or the wife you embrace, or your friend who is as your own soul.
Right. The context is not important right now. The context is really if one of these people entice you to worship idols, you shouldn't listen to them, even though they're really close to you. But here we get a little glimpse of to the idea of friendship as it is observed, as it is seen in the Torah. What is a friend? The Torah tells us, listen carefully, your friend who is as your own soul. That is friendship, according to the Torah again. What is a friend? See, it doesn't need to define the word brother or the son of your mother, the son of your, or whatever it is, or your wife, not so much. Why? Because that's clear what it is. But friend, the word friend needs to be defined in Torah because, again, it's such a vague word. So how does it define it? A friend that's like your own soul. What does it mean like your own soul? A friend that I believe understands not just your exterior, but also your interior. Understands your soul. He is so connected that he sees right through you. And when he sees right through you, he's able not just to connect to that soul, but also to understand it, to appreciate it, to respect it, and to really elevate it. That's what a friend is. It's a person that sees your soul and that knows it. Now, what does that mean? Again, I think we have to divide this big idea into 5 separate ingredients. I think the first ingredient is the ingredient of listening. A friend is someone who knows how to listen to that soul. Not just to listen to your verbalized words, but to listen to your soul. I remember that when I became a rabbi, I went to my dear mentor, Rabbi Dean Steinsaltz, with my certificate, and I asked him, Rabbi, what does this mean? Fine, I'm a rabbi, I have a diploma, but what does it mean? And he says it means a lot of things, but if I had to condense it into one big idea, and I'll never forget this advice, he said what it means is that now people will come to you with questions. Your task as a rabbi is to understand the question behind the question. To relate not just to the words, but to the person behind the words. Because very often, as he explained to me, people will come to you with questions, but what they're asking is really not what they're asking. They're asking something much deeper. And you as a rabbi have to try and understand where they're coming from. What are they really asking? It's to understand the question behind the question. And I think in a way, that's what a friend is. A friend is a person who understands the question behind the question. Why? Because he or she knows how to truly listen to you. And in general, Kabbalistically, there are 3 different levels of listening. There's what's called the I to it type of listening, the I to thou type of listening, and the I to I type of listening. Let's go over the 10 levels quickly. And I want to make a point that you'll see that the 3rd level, which is reflected by number 9 and number 10 here, are the levels of that reflect true friendship. Let's go over these 10 different points again that are that fit into 3 different categories. The first category is the category of I to it. It goes from point 1 to point 4. Does anyone want to go through these 4 points very quickly? Anyone? And that's the lowest type of listening, okay? 1 to 4. Does anyone want to read this?
Rabbi, please repeat whoever reads because they don't get picked up on your mic.
Oh, okay. Fine. You go. So that means I have to read it.
Pretty much, yeah.
The whole point. Okay, fine. All right. So I'll read the first 4. Well, someone else will read the first 4. That's fine. Randy, go for it, please.
Okay, number 1, passive ignoring, simple ignoring.
Right.
2, active ignoring.
Good. All right. So in other words, what does that mean? That someone stops you in the street and says, excuse me, what time is it? What the number 1 relates to is passive ignoring. You just continue to walk. You act as if you don't listen. Active ignoring is saying to the person, what time is it? I don't want to tell you. And you continue to walk. That's active ignoring. So you heard what the person was saying, but you chose to ignore. That's, of course, the worst type of listening, the lowest level of listening. You listen, you heard something, but you completely ignored it either passively or actively. Number 3 and number 4. Let's continue. 3 or 4. Please, Sandy, please.
Pretending to listening, but nothing that is said is really registering.
Right.
Recording, how students study for a test.
Right, that's a slightly higher. Pretending, that happens a lot in bars and nightclubs. You meet someone and you say, yes, oh, it's so interesting. I love to hear about your life, but you really couldn't care less. You're just pretending. So you're listening, you're hearing, but really nothing is registering. Number 4 is when a person studies for a test, which is a good example. Something is being recorded in here, but the second after the test, you forgot it all. Right? Has it happened to you? You've been to school before? So you studied for a test. The day after the test, you don't remember anything. Why? Because you didn't do it really for reasons of enriching your knowledge or for reasons that really are beyond you. But you really did it for a very specific purpose, to pass the test, and that's about it. So the second after, you can erase things from your memory, just like computers do. That's a level of listening again, but it's not the level that is desired. So from 1 to 4 really is, by the way, these are definitions of Martin Buber, but 1 to 4 is the I to it relationship, really, where you relate to the other as an it, or as an object. In other words, you relate to the other as long as that other can bring you some type of benefit or advantage. If the other can't bring you any benefit or advantage, you just throw the other away. You don't need it anymore. It's like an object. This chair is dear to me if I can use it to sit on it. If I don't have to use it to sit on it, I couldn't care less about this chair. Some people relate to others like this. I'll listen to you as long as you have something to bring to my life. As long as I can pass the test through you. As long as if I pretend to listen, I can maybe go on another date with you. But then you're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for the other. And therefore, this is really the worst type of listening. Hasidic teachings, many Hasidic teachings from all sorts of Hasidic branches really relate to this as the worst type of love. Because and they call it, it's called in Hasidic teachings, it's called selfish love. What is selfish love? And the comparison, the analogy that's used is the same way people love fruits. Does anyone love, say, oranges here? Yeah? Do you all love oranges? Well, you live in the right place. Good. I hope you have an orange tree at home then also, if you love oranges. But really, if you think about it, you don't love the oranges. If you would love the oranges, you would leave them on the tree. You would let them grow. But you're killing the orange when you're eating it, or when you're picking it and then eating it. So you don't really love the orange. You love the pleasure that the orange brings to you. So who is it that you're loving? Yourself. The orange serves as a purpose, as a very selfish purpose for you, so you love it, but you're really not loving the orange itself. And very often relationships are like that. I don't love you. I love the pleasure that you bring to me. And that's really the worst type of relationship, because then if you won't bring to me that pleasure anymore, I won't need you anymore. Oh, there wasn't a relationship there to begin with, because it was an I to it relationship. I've always related to you as an object, and that's the lowest type of relationship again. And therefore, number 1 to number 4 is really the worst type of listening, and that's not where true friendship comes about. 5 to 6, no, it continues on, sorry. 5 and 6 are still connected to the I and it, and then 7 to 8 are already a different type of relation. Let's continue with 5 and 6. 5 and 6, and then that's still under the I to it category, and then we'll go to 7 and 8. Does anyone want to read 5 and 6? Please.
Projecting, listening to what you want to hear, manipulating. You get out of them what you want them to say.
Right. I think that happens very often in arguments where you say, but you said this. You pick and choose the words. You have what's called selective hearing, right? Where you say, oh, no, but that's not what you said, and you take things completely out of context. Again, you're listening, for your selfish purposes, not really to connect to the other as he or she is. So again, this fits under this category of I to it. Let's go to 7 and 8. This is now the I to thou relationship. Does anyone want to read this? 7 and 8. Please.
7, hearing. 8, sympathizing.
Right.
Not only do you hear the words, but you are open to the other as a whole person. And so you hear his intimations, you are open to his gestures, body language, and the posture. It is hearing a person's pain and his joy.
Right. Apparently they say that only 7% of what is communicated from one person to another in a conversation is done through words. The rest is done through the body language. A person who truly connects to you, truly listens to you, is a person who can connect to the 100%, not just to the 7%, who connects to the entire person. I think, who said empathy? Who used the word empathy for friendship? Who was it? Howard. You used, Howard, thank you, yeah. That's what it means, where I really empathize with the other person, sympathize with him, I feel the other person, which reminds me of the Hasidic story of one of the great Hasidic rabbis, Rabbi Dov Ber. Rabbi Dov Ber of Lubavitch, who lived some 200 years ago. But Rabbi Dov Ber was a person who would sweat profusely when he would meet people one-on-one. And one day someone asked him, Rabbi Dov Ber, why do you sweat so much when you meet people? And he said, look, I'll tell you the truth. When I meet people, I have to change my clothes many times. And I asked him, what do you mean? He said, well, first, someone comes to me with a problem, I really have to understand his or her problem. So what I have to do is really undress myself spiritually and then dress myself into that person's clothes. So that's one, already undressing and dressing, so that I can truly understand the problem of that person. But then if I'm in that person's clothes, I can't really think of a solution because I'm stuck in his or her problem. So what I have to do once I understood his problem is again undress myself and go back to the Rebbe's clothes. So I undress and dress a second time, and then again. That's, demands a lot of effort and a lot of sweating. But then when I'm back in the Rebbe's clothes now, thinking of an advice for that person, I don't really know how to apply the advice. So I have to again undress myself and redress myself in a person's clothes to know how to apply the advice. And then I have to go back to being a Rebbe, so I have to go back to my clothes. So altogether, I undress and dress myself 4 times. That's tremendous. That takes a tremendous amount of energy and effort, and therefore I sweat so much. But here was a person who knew how to listen, who knew how to really empathize with the person, that he felt the person's pain, the person's joy. And not only that, he also knew then how to come up with an advice that really related to the essence of the person. That's what this means. And this is called the I to thou, where the other person now is not an object anymore. He's a thou, he's a human being. And you relate to that entire human being, to the 100% of the human being. That's hearing, that's sympathizing. Linda, did you want to say something? I know you raised your hand.
Well, I was going to say that the unspoken words, I was just thinking about everything. Being a true friend is knowing what the person is not saying to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, because sometimes they can't tell you the words, and if you really are connected, you know what they would like to be able to communicate.
Right.
And feel it somehow.
Excellent point. Excellent point. That's why sometimes friends don't even need to speak to one another to know what they need or what they don't need, what pain they're in and what joy they're in. All they need to do sometimes is just look at one another, be in each other's presence. I'm sure you felt that with some of your true friends. You don't even need to speak. And they already immediately understood you because they have that level of listening. They listen to the entire persona. Good. All right. Then number 9 and number 10, I think, takes us to an even higher level. And that's the I to I, as Martin Buber calls it again. But let's read number 9 and number 10. Does anyone want to read? Please.
Empowering. You listen in a way that you empower the speaker's abilities.
Right.
Unity. Your own powers become his. So say you're a person that is passive and calm, and the other person struggles with anger. By this deep listening, your traits of calmness allows for your traits to flow through him. This is a deep level of listening, the I to I.
Right. So in other words, you are so one with the other that you influence the other positively and the other influences you. That happens, I think, in marriages very often, where people are really committed to one another for a long period of time, I think over a long period of time, that they become one to the point that they start benefiting one another with the qualities, with the unique qualities that they each have. You know how people say that, you ever heard of the idea that people look like their pets? Yes? You look like your dogs or your cats or whatever pet you may have, right? Well, I think that may be true, may be or may not be true externally, but in friendships it's true internally. You look like your friend internally. In other words, the qualities that you have been passed on to your friend because you are so one. And that's why they say that friends really make you better. That's how you know whether a friend is a good friend or a true friend or not. If in his or her surroundings you become a better person, you're elevated. That's because these qualities are almost passed on to you. So that's the big idea. And I think that's the idea again of being able to listen, to truly listen, so that I feel the other, but sometimes I feel the other so much that I can also benefit from the other and the other can benefit from me. You know, there's another Hasidic story that comes to mind about two young boys who were playing the rabbi and student game. I don't know if you I've ever shared a story like that with you, but very often Hasidic Jews, what do they play? Do they play marbles? Not really. Do they play cards? Not really. What game do they play? They play the rabbi and student game. It's actually a common game among Hasidic Jews, among ultra-Orthodox Jews, where a 7-year-old, for example, will all of a sudden tell his brother, hey, you're my student, I'm the rabbi, you can ask me any questions, let's act out. I'm the rabbi, you're the student. Anyway, there was about 100 years ago, there were two young boys who later became great rabbis in their own right, who were playing that game. They were brothers, and the 7-year-old told the 5-year-old, I'm your rabbi, you're my student, come, ask me any question you have. The 5-year-old came to the 7-year-old rabbi and said, okay, I have a question for you, Rabbi. Yesterday, when I ate my food, I forgot to say the blessing over the food. What should I do now? And the 7-year-old rabbi said, oh, it's easy. Next time you eat food, just make sure to say a blessing. And when you do say that blessing, just have in mind that that blessing should also go for the food that you did not bless yesterday. The 5-year-old student tells the 7-year-old rabbi, you're a fake rabbi. So the 7-year-old rabbi says, what? Why? He says, because the real rabbi would have sighed and felt my pain before delivering this answer. You deliver it so quickly, so automatically, you must be a fake rabbi. But I think in a way, also you can say the same thing about friends. You're a fake friend if you don't sigh, if you don't really feel the other person's pain, if you don't know how to listen to that point. If you do know how to listen, then you can move to ingredient number 2. Ingredient number 2, I think, is really based on the commandment that speaks of relationships, of friendships, which was coined by many, including Hillel the Elder, as the most important commandment in the entire Torah. Do you know which commandment I'm speaking about? What? Right, exactly. Or that's the phrase that he used, but it's exactly, it's based on love your fellow as yourself. V'ahavta l'racha kamocha. The commandment in Leviticus 19:18. You should love your fellow as yourself. Now, what's interesting is that Rabbi Akiva was one of those who said that this is the most important commandment in the entire Torah. To love your fellow as yourself. Yet, we are also told that Rabbi Akiva's students died in a plague. Why? Because they did not show respect to one another. Now you ask yourself, one second, their teacher was the one who said that to love one another is the most important commandment in the entire Torah. They themselves couldn't follow that commandment. They didn't show respect, and therefore they died in a plague. Out of all people in the world, that would expect specifically the students of Rabbi Akiva to adhere to this commandment, to at least show respect to one another. Why couldn't they listen to their great rabbi who said that this is the most important rule? And that's what, by the way, that's what these references speak of. And the answer, I think, is very clear. That's because Rabbi Akiva taught them to love. It doesn't say they didn't love one another. What it says is that they didn't respect one another. Why didn't they respect one another? Because they followed Rabbi Akiva's teaching a little bit too much. They loved each other too much. What do I mean? Love and respect are really two opposite things if you think about this. They only love. When you only love and you have no respect, that love becomes dangerous. Now, love and respect is mentioned on two opposite things. Why am I saying that? Because just think about this. When you love someone, you want to come close to that person. You want to hug them, you want to kiss them. When you respect someone, you maintain your distance a little bit, right? You have this awe towards a person, so you respect the person. So love brings two people close. Respect brings two people a little bit distant from one another. What's the ultimate type of friendship? The ultimate type of friendship is a friendship in which I love, I come close, but I also know how to step back when that person says, you know what, I need me time. I need some time now just for myself. I feel like you're overstepping your boundaries. Or whatever the circumstance may be. But the person says, you know what, right now I feel like I'm not being respected in the way that I'm allowed to just be. And sometimes you find that in relationships that a person, out of love, a spouse will tell his or her spouse, you know what, I think you should brush your teeth this way and not that way. But if they brush their teeth this way, what do you care? They tell you, well, it's out of love. But why can't you just respect the way a person brushes their teeth? Sometimes respect is what is needed instead of love. I'm just thinking of that because I think that in a way, you know, everyone speaks of love these days. If you go to Hollywood, and in Hollywood they showcase all these lovely couples, everyone loves. But I don't think many people really respect. And again, respect is that ability to say, you know what, you're unique. You're not like me. You have your own talents. I'll encourage you to develop those talents, even if I can't really necessarily understand them. That's where respect comes into play. And I think that, again, that's one of the great things lacking in relationships today. Everyone loves, but no one really respects. What Rabbi Akiva's students didn't understand is that they needed to respect one another. And respect means, yes, sometimes I know how to back off. I know how to say, you know what, just be. And I think in true friendships, we find that friends know how to say to one another, you know what, I don't understand that quality that you have, but I'll let you have it because I know it's yours. I know it's a reflection of your identity, and I respect that. I can't love it, can't come close to it because I don't understand it, but I respect it, and therefore I'll back off. You're allowed to be. And I think that's one of the great ingredients of friendships. And this of course relates to not just the timeout that sometimes people need, not just to skills and qualities, but also to their ability to listen, to know when your friend might be embarrassed. And to say, you know what, I'm not going to embarrass that person right now, I'm going to respect that person. I'll tell you what, but I heard from my own rabbi that on his way to shul every Shabbat morning, he takes, I mean, he doesn't walk he had a stroke some 2 years ago, but he takes what's called a long cut and not a short cut. He goes way more, he walks way more than he really needs to. And I once asked him, why do you walk through that route and not through the shortcut right here? And he tells me, I'll tell you the truth, that in that route, there are stores that are open on Shabbat. This is even in Jerusalem. And he tells me, I know the owners of these stores. And I don't want to embarrass them if I walk through those stores through the shortcut. So I'm going to go all around just not to embarrass them. And yeah, I thought to myself, here's a rabbi who not only knows how to listen, like we spoke about, but also knows how to respect. He knows that people are different than him. And he says, you know what, I respect that. I might not be able to understand it as a rabbi, but I respect it. And I think in friendship, that's so crucially needed. Might not be able to understand whatever you may be doing, but I still respect you as a human being, respect your differences. You know, they tell the story, the Midrash tells the story of the spot that was chosen as the spot on which Temple Mount will be, on which the temples will be built. And the Midrash says, why is it? Has anyone been to Jerusalem? You've all been to Jerusalem, some of you. Well, you've all seen that spot. And the question the Midrash asks is, why was that spot chosen as the spot in which the temples are built? Is there anything special about it? Why did God choose that mountain? He could have chosen a different mountain. And the answer the Midrash provides is a beautiful story, really, about two brothers. Two brothers that loved and respected one another tremendously. They grew up, they both got married, and one had a very tough time with his business. And he was really poor. But what was going for him is that he had many children. He had, I think the Midrash says, 7 children. His brother that he loved so much was very successful in business. He was very wealthy, but he couldn't have any children. And every night before going to sleep, the brothers would think about one another. One brother would say, oh, I have so many children. My brother doesn't have any. He must be so sad. How can I bring him some happiness? The brother who was very wealthy would say, oh, my brother is very poor. He must be so sad. How can I bring him some happiness? And then they both decided more or less at the same time that they would bring one another some happiness in 2 different ways. The one who had children would collect drawings of his children, package them, create albums maybe from them, and then secretly in the middle of the night, go to the home of his brother, drop off those drawings at the entrance of his home, and run away. The brother who thought, how can I help my brother who's so poor, said, you know what, he probably needs money, so I'll go in the middle of the night with a package of coins and bills, drop it off at the entrance of the home. He'll wake up in the morning, he'll find this fortune at his footsteps, the footsteps of his home, and he'll be so happy. They decided to do that secretly without knowing that each other had decided, right, to secretly go to one's home. Anyhow, the first day, of course, the brother who doesn't have any children opens up his door and he sees all these drawings. Of course, it brings him a lot of happiness. Wow, I don't have children, but at least I have drawings of children who care about me. Means a lot. And the other brother, he opened up the entrance of his home and he saw all this money. Wow, finally I can provide for my family. I'm so happy. Someone must be thinking about me. I'm so grateful. This went on for months. Eventually, in the middle of the night, at about 2 o'clock in the morning, they were walking and they discovered one another. And they said to each other, oh, you're the one who's dropping off drawings now for months? That one said, you're the one who's dropping off all this money now for months? And they fell on each other's shoulders, gave each other a warm embrace of love and of tears. When Hashem, when God saw that embrace, saw that love, saw that respect, no one wanted to hurt each other's feelings, right? Saw that respect, God said, that's exactly where my temples will be built. And that's how Temple Mount was chosen. So next time you go to the Kotel, I want you to think of that story and see also how you can show that same type of love and respect to your brothers and sisters or to your spiritual brothers and sisters. But I think, again, that's the level of respect that must be achieved in friendships. Number 3, I call it the art of criticism, because I think that friends should criticize one another, but they also should know how to criticize one another. Friends are allowed to rebuke, but they should know how to rebuke. Where did I learn this from? From a very peculiar passage in the Talmud, in the Torah, that speaks about the malady of leprosy. The malady of leprosy in general was a malady that befell people who spoke negatively about others, who went on gossiping. Thank God this malady doesn't exist anymore, because I think that 50% of the world would be sick with it, or at least, you know, or anyone who reads the National Enquirer or the Punch magazine in Great Britain will all of a sudden be filled with leprosy. But let's read a little bit about this malady, and I want to know, I want to draw an important lesson about criticism from this malady. Does anyone want to read? Sarat is a malady. Anyone? Please. Please. Go ahead, Seymour.
Sarat is a malady that would befall a person who had committed the sin of Lashon Hara, spreading gossip. He or she would then be compelled to separate themselves from society and sit isolated away from the Jewish nation's camp. If a person is afflicted with leprosy, a Kohen must come and examine the new skin disease on the person's body. If the Kohen determines that it is indeed leprosy, he must proceed to declare the person tameh, impure. If not, the person remains tahor, pure, and he or she does not have to face the aforementioned consequences.
Right.
But what if the Kohen was a complete ignoramus?
Right.
What if he had not studied the laws of leprosy? How could he still examine a person? The solution offered is simple. A chacham, a tzarat expert, was brought to the scene to inspect the disease, and the Kohen would then declare whether the person was categorized as pure or not according to the expert's conclusion. Right.
Okay. So again, the Kohen had to come and examine the person to see if he had leprosy, and then to be able to welcome him back to the camp. If the Kohen was an ignoramus, he would bring an expert with him, and the expert would tell the Kohen, say, repeat after me, pure, if the expert thought he was pure, or impure if the expert thought that he was impure. My question to you is this: why couldn't the expert go by himself? Why did the Kohen have to come with him? If the Kohen was an ignoramus, he served no purpose. It's the expert examining the leprosy, right? So then why bring the Kohen with you? Just let the expert go by himself. You don't trust the expert? The expert's not going to, he's an expert. He's not going to come back with the wrong conclusion. So why not just send the expert by himself? Yes, and
Because I think the Kohen was a trusted person in the community.
okay, because the Kohen was a trusted person in the community, and the Chachams were not, the experts were not.
Well, but if it was the word of the Kohen, maybe that meant more.
That's right. So I want to go in that direction. Why did the Kohen have to come along? I think for a brilliant reason. You see, Kohanim, already, is anyone a Kohen here by any chance? Oh, okay. All right. So we have two Kohens. And I want you to know that you embody love. In fact, when the Kohanim blessed the nation of Israel, by the way, in our congregation, the Kohanim bless us each and every Shabbat morning. What do they say? HaMevarech et Amo Yisrael be'ahava. That they bless the nation of Israel with love. Why did the Kohen have to go with the expert? Because if you are going to criticize a person as impure, you better make sure that that criticism comes from love. And no one embodies love more than the Kohen. Therefore, only the Kohen could do it. Because if he said it, you knew it was right. You knew that it came from love, and therefore you knew it was right. And I think in a way, there's a very powerful lesson here. If you are going to criticize as a friend, then being a friend, you know that the only criticism that works is criticism that comes from love. And I'm sure you have friends like this, friends that criticize you. I have friends that criticize me, but I know that when they criticize me out of love. And therefore I'm open to that criticism. Friends that criticize not out of love, just to put you down, are not really friends. And I think that's why it's such a crucial important. It reminds me of excuse all my stories, but another story about a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and not the different, but they also became great rabbis, but different brothers. But the 7-year-old was very upset because his 5-year-old brother was actually taller than him. So you know how kids are. Height means a lot. When you're as short as me, you start learning slowly but surely. It doesn't mean that much. I comfort myself saying that Einstein was short. The Lubavitcher Rebbe was pretty short. My rabbi is short, so I'm fine. But in any case, this 7-year-old was very bothered that his 5-year-old is taller than him. So one day they were playing in the backyard, and their father was watching them. And the 7-year-old sees that there's a ditch. So he pushes his 5-year-old brother in the ditch, and immediately uses this opportunity to stand over his 5-year-old brother and says, "You see, I'm taller than you." The father, seeing that, goes to the 7-year-old and to the 5-year-old, takes the 5-year-old out of the ditch, and then he brings a chair, and he tells the 7-year-old, "Please stand on the chair." Then he asks the brothers, "Who's taller now?" The 7-year-old again, he's all happy, and he says, "I'm taller again, I'm taller." And the rabbi says, "You see, to be taller, you don't have to push someone in a ditch. You can raise yourself up, and then you'll be taller." That was the educational moment that he really capitalized on, this great rabbi. To be taller, you don't have to push someone else in a ditch. And it's so true. Friends don't push each other in a ditch. Friends bring chairs to one another to elevate them. That's what they do. That's how their criticism looks like. They say, "You might be missing a chair." That's their criticism. So here's my chair. I'll help you. I'll elevate you. Through that trouble, through what I'm seeing, I'll create some light. And that's really what we learn from this specific law about tzaraat. I think that's what Jacob did also. We wouldn't have to go into all the verses of Jacob, but Jacob was known in Israel. It's almost like it's part of of every second sentence that Israelis now say. But they call each other. I don't know. Does anyone speak Hebrew here fluently? Okay, so it's become like it's become so common in Israel. But what exactly? Everyone calls one another Achi, my brother, right? But actually, like the strangest people, I mean, people that are like, the most far away from one another still call themselves brothers. You would call someone the cashier. You would call the person in the bank your brother. Achi, achoti. Everyone calls their one another brothers in Israel. But that comes from our forefather Jacob, and I'll explain how soon.
I was listening to this woman speak at a video, Muslim woman, talking about how Muslims have used destruction to try to raise themselves up. She says the Jews have been put down and buried and killed and attacked, And they've raised themselves up to education, to providing, to making the world better.
Right.
I thought that was beautiful when I heard that. The Jews have taken all this has happened, and they haven't gone, they don't come and blow us up now. They don't come and kill. They
Right.
contribute. I thought it was beautiful.
No doubt. I mean, there's no doubt that the Jewish approach has always been to find light within darkness, and not to blame the world, but really to take almost to become masters of our own destiny. And I think in the most positive way, right? Which other nation, I've said this many times before, but think about this, which other nation has turned their enemies into sweet cookies? That's what we do on Purim. We turn Haman, the enemy of Purim, Haman, into Hamantashen. Right? Hamantashen. Tashen is the ear, right? So based on his ears. Like you eat your enemy on Purim. That's what you do. And he tastes so sweet. But that shows, I think that's reflective of the Jewish approach, that we take the pain, we take the suffering, and we elevate it into a sweet place. Yes? The mitzvah of rebuke. So, look, right. There's a mitzvah of rebuke, and it's interesting, I'm glad you mentioned it, because it says like this, Ocheach tocheach et amitecha, velo tisa alav chet. That's a verse from Leviticus, I think Leviticus 19:16, which means you should rebuke your friend, but you should not hold him accountable. That's really what it means, to any sin. So in other words, what the Torah is really telling us is that if you are going to rebuke, you have to see the person as completely pure. He's completely clean. He's not accountable. He's lo tisa alav chet. He has no sin. If you can see a person like that, then you can rebuke. I think that's why friends, like we were saying, can criticize one another out of love. What does it mean out of love? That they see the person is completely clean, so they see a little discrepancy, but it's not part of their essence. It's not part of the person. And when a person is approached in that way, then I think a person can listen to the rebuke and can really erase that discrepancy. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure I understand. In other words, that if you do see a sin, then you would be accountable for not rebuking your friend, for not saying anything. I think it depends. Again, first of all, it depends where it comes from, where the rebuke comes from. You have to see your friend as a pure person, and the sin or the mistake your friend may have committed was not really a part of him, or something that's strange to him. That's how you should see the picture, that it doesn't define him. If you can see your friend in that way, then you should rebuke him. But then again, when you do rebuke him, you still have to make sure that the rebuke will be heard. If the rebuke is not heard, then really there's no point of the rebuke. Maimonides says something very powerful. Maybe I should have brought down the source. But Maimonides says something, and it's profound words. But he says, just like it is a mitzvah to say something that is heard, so too it is a mitzvah not to say something that is not heard. What does that mean? It's a mitzvah to say something to a friend of yours, to even rebuke him, if that friend is going to listen to you. Internalize your words and take it in the right way. But if you know your friend is not going to hear you, so it's a mitzvah not to say something that is not heard. And I think a true friend knows when to speak and when not to speak. And sometimes the silence itself is rebuke. And then your friend, as we mentioned before, really, if you have true friends, you don't really need to speak much to them. Just by your silence, they'll know that you want to rebuke them, and they'll change their ways out of love also, out of that friendship. Reminds me, speaking of Israel, there's one of the great singers in the 90s was Kobi Oz, who was the head of the Tipex band. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Have you heard of the band Tipex? It was a great band in Israel in the 90s. But Kobe Oz, not long ago, decided to compose a very traditional Sephardic songs. And I asked him, Kobe Oz, you're a rock and roller. Why did you start composing all these traditional songs? And he said, I'll tell you why. It's because of my grandfather. I asked him, what do you mean? He said, I'll never forget the silence of my grandfather. It's been haunting me for so many years. I had to do something about it, and therefore I'm composing traditional songs. They asked him, what's the story? And he said, well, it was the day of my bar mitzvah. It was my grandfather walking me to synagogue. And on the way to synagogue, my grandfather said, so what are you going to do today? You're going to read the Torah? He said, yes. He said, are you going to read the Haftarah? Kobe said, no. The grandfather, instead of shouting at him, because he knew he was very upset that he wasn't reading the Haftarah, he just kept silent. He didn't say a word. He went on, did his bar mitzvah, but that left a deep hole in his heart. He said, the silence of my grandfather has been haunting me for so many years. And finally, he did something about it. Now he composes traditional Sephardic songs. But sometimes, again, rebuke comes just from silence. And I think true friends can give each other that silent treatment, right? In a positive way, of course. And that in of itself is enough for rebuking sometimes. But in any case, the word achi, again, comes from our forefather Jacob, who before he rebuked a certain group of shepherds, he called them brothers. And that melted their hearts. So you have to have that love first, that love of a Kohen, so to speak, before one can rebuke. That's how friends criticize one another. That's number 3. Number 4 is the art of forgiveness that we've spoken about in the past. But I think friends know how to forgive and forget, as they say. Friends certainly adhere to this biblical commandment not to bear a grudge against anyone. Yeah, from Leviticus 19:18, which is the same verse, that same part of the verse that speaks of loving your fellow as yourself. Not to bear a grudge. They know how to let go. They really know how to forgive. Friends that bear grudges maybe are not true friends, because that grudge really not just comes in between you and them, but I think eventually that grudge can destroy the friendship. No real connection can then blossom. You know, it's interesting, but who said connection? I think you said connection, right? About friendship. But in Hebrew, the word for friend is chaver, right? What does chaver really mean in Hebrew? It comes from the word connection, chibur. That means you're so one with your friend, that connection is so strong that nothing comes in between it. If you have a grudge, there can't be a complete connection. There can't be a chibur, a chaver. And therefore, a person that bears a grudge against a friend is not a person who can be a true friend. A person that can't adhere to this commandment is not a person that can be a true friend. And I want to quote the Tzemach Tzedek here, who was a great Hasidic master too, here, the reference number 3, on page number 3, about the differences between children and adults. And I think that true friends understand this difference very well. Does anyone want to read? Please, Linda, go for it.
What is the difference between children and adults? Children don't harbor grudges. They may swear with all sincerity, I hate you, and yet they quickly become the best friend once again. An adult, on the other hand, carries resentment, sometimes for decades, without forgetting and without forgiving. Why the difference? Because children choose being happy over being right. Adults choose being right over being happy. We all have to make this choice in our lives. Do we want to be right, or do we wish to be happy?
Right. And friends, more than anyone, have to make that choice in their life. Do they want to be right, or do they want to be happy? Do they want to have a wholesome connection, or do they want to have a broken connection? Broken connection will eventually affect their friendship. Now, I think I have to ask the other question, the other side of this, is where does that come from, the ability to forgive a friend? I think it comes from the idea that your friend is so much more than that deed that he did that might have hurt you. There's so much more to the person than whatever he or she may have done. And a friend knows how to relate to that so much more. And therefore, the thing that he or she may have done is just a hiccup. Okay, it's something they can simply just brush off. But if you turn that hiccup into the entire person himself, then again, no real connection can be made. I think that, you know, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, I just quoted before, but Rabbi Schneerson saw people like that in many ways. But there's a great story about, maybe it's a story that I've recounted in the past, but a story about him being questioned by an 87-year-old woman who once came to him as he was giving dollars on a Sunday afternoon. Every Sunday, the Lubavitcher Rebbe would give dollars to people, and that's the way he would meet thousands of people and also bless them. Sometimes it would be a line of 9 hours, 10 hours, just of thousands of people coming to see him from all over the world. And one day an elderly woman came to him, an 87-year-old woman came to him and said, "Rebbe, I don't understand you. Look at you, you're almost the same age as I am, and you stand here all day long, standing." He wasn't even sitting. Stand here all day long, greeting people, blessing people, giving them dollars for charity. Where does your strength come from? How can you do that? And the Lubavitcher Rebbe responded with a one-liner that meant volumes. You can write books and books just on that one line. What did he say? He said to her, when you count diamonds, you don't get tired. When you count diamonds, you don't get tired. He saw people as diamonds. And therefore he didn't get tired, even though he was close to being 87-year-old, or whatever the age that he had then. But I think that in a way, true friends know that the other is a diamond. So sometimes the diamond gets a little bit dirty. Sometimes it's filthy. But they know that that's not what counts about their friendship or about the other. And therefore they're able to forgive and forget. Okay, so we'll polish that diamond a little bit and rediscover the light of the diamond that we know exists there. But that's why they can also forgive. True friends can then not just forgive, but truly connect to the diamond that they see. And in a way, I think that's what point number 5 evokes regarding the fifth ingredient of true friendships, and that I called it the art of seeing. True friends know how to see right through the external layers of the being and see the diamond in each and every one. But I learned this from a particular mitzvah in the Torah. Now, in general, just as a small introduction to this mitzvah, it's interesting to note, but there are very few laws, very few commandments in the Torah that are illogical, right? Most commandments can be understood. Do not steal, we can understand that, right? Do not lie, we can understand that. Give tzedakah, we can understand that. There are very few commandments that are illogical. One of them is eating kosher. That's considered as a commandment that's a chok in the Talmud, which means it's illogical. Nevertheless, there are some attempts to try and understand this commandment. One of the attempts is actually a Hasidic attempt that comes and says what scientists are saying today, that you are what you eat. Right? You are what you eat. Now, kosher animals are usually more refined animals than non-kosher animals. Non-kosher animals are the predators. Kosher animals are the victims. They are more refined. So sheep are kosher, cows are kosher. They are not predators. If you eat a predator, you might become a predator yourself. You are what you eat. And therefore, non-kosher animals are not allowed. But kosher animals are more refined, so you'll inherit those more refined characteristics. In any case, if that's the case, if you are what you eat, there is a bird out there that I would love to eat. Why? Because apparently it has the best eyesight in the world. And if you are what you eat and you could eat that bird, then I could get rid of my glasses, and everyone here could also get rid of their glasses if you're wearing one. Because you are what you eat. So you can inherit the eyesight of that bird. Yet that bird is not kosher. What bird is it? It's called the Ra'ah or the Da'ah or the Ayah. It has 3 separate names. Now, let's read about the eyesight of this bird directly here from the Babylonian Talmud. Rabbi Abahu said, the Ra'ah bird. Does anyone want to read? Anyone? Please.
Rabbi Abahu said, the Ra bird is the same as the Ayah. Why is this bird called Ra?
Right.
Because it sees exceedingly well. We have learned that this bird stands in Babylon and sees a carcass in the land of Israel.
Right. How far is Israel from Babylon? About 500 miles. So it's called the Ra'ah. Ra'ah in Hebrew means to see. That's because it can see a carcass in the land of Israel all the way from mountaintops of Babylon. So why isn't this bird kosher? And the answer, I think, is very powerful. Because what does this bird see as it's standing on the mountaintops of Babylon? A carcass. The land of Israel is a land flowing with milk and honey. It's a beautiful land. But all it chooses to see is a carcass. That's not the type of eyesight I want. If you have an eyesight that's so negative, pessimistic, that can only see dead bodies, that's not an eyesight I want. And that's why it's not kosher. But in a way, this commandment also teaches us what it means to have a real good, friendly eyesight. And that means that you're able to see the beauty in the other, not just the death in the other, not just the darkness in the other. True friends know how to see that shining soul in the other. And I think, you know, Tu B'Shvat is coming up, but I think that that shining soul is not just in the other. I want to broaden this in honor of Tu B'Shvat, but it's in every aspect of God's creation. Tu B'Shvat, as I mentioned, is coming up next week, be on Monday. Tu B'Shvat is the birthday of the trees. But apparently, even the blades that we encounter sometimes, even the blades of grass that we encounter sometimes, also have that dimension, that holiness, that angel. How do we know this? From the Midrash. Let's read the quote here from the Midrash. Said Rabbi Shimon. Does anyone want to read? Please? Please, yeah. Said Rabbi Shimon.
Every blade of grass has an angel that bends over it and whispers, grow, grow.
Right, even blades of grass have angels over them saying, grow, grow. In other words, even the lowliest, you know, type of creation, maybe not the lowliest, but one of the lowliest types of creation, have angels. If grass has angels, so do human beings. True friends know how to see the angel in the other, or the angel in the marble, as they call it. And they also know how to cultivate that angel, to make it grow, as this Midrash teaches us. You know, there was one of the great rabbis, passed away some, 30 years ago. One of the great rabbis in Israel was Rabbi Aryeh Levin. He was known as Rav HaAsirim, which means the rabbi of the prisoners. He would go to all these prisons in Israel and visit prisoners. And he was also known for his tremendous love towards each and every person, each and every Jew and non-Jew. But one day, Rabbi Aryeh Levin was walking in his city of Jerusalem, in the streets of Jerusalem, and he saw a student of his coming towards him and then making a U-turn, trying to avoid the rabbi. And Rabbi Levin saw him from far, and he started shouting at him. He said, Reuven, come here, come back. Why are you running away? So Reuven comes back out of respect, and he's all embarrassed. His face is red. And Rabbi Levin tells, what's wrong? Did I do anything to you? And Reuven says, no, Rabbi Levin, you don't understand. You knew me when I was very religious. Look, today I don't have a kippah. I'm completely uninterested in religion. And Rabbi Aryeh Levin turns to him. He says, Reuven, you don't have to run away from me. You see, I'm a very short person. And all I can see in you is your heart. You're much taller. All I can see is your heart. I don't look at what's on top of you. I look in here. And I think in a way, that's what true friends are. True friends look in here. You might sometimes fail. You might sometimes, you know, do things that are maybe, you know, that hurtful or offensive. But they know that at the end of the day, you have a heart that has an angel saying to it, grow, grow. They're able to connect to that, and that makes all the difference for them. And just to conclude, also because this coming Wednesday is the yahrzeit of the previous Lubavitcher Rabbi, Rabbi Schneerson, Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson. But he was known for his tremendous love also towards each and every Jew. And one day, I just read this, but one day there was a great rabbi who wrote to him about a noble cause that he was initiating, and he called the cause Kiruv Rechokim. And by the way, I don't know if you've ever heard of the word Kiruv. People use that word very often. Kiruv, which means bringing close those who are far. And this rabbi was writing about something that he had founded in Israel, to go out to the people that he called secular and to bring them close to Judaism. So I'm reading this letter, and I'm reading the response of Rabbi Schneerson of blessed memory, again, whose yahrzeit is on Wednesday. And the response of Rabbi Schneerson is very, very brief. What he did is that he took the letter of this man and he crossed out the words Kiruv Rechokim. And next to that, that line that crossed out the words Kiruv Rechokim, which means to bring the farther ones closer, he wrote, and how do you know who's close and who's distant in the eyes of God? How can you know? Maybe you're the one that's far, he didn't write that, but maybe you're the one that's far and they are the ones that are close. How can you tell? And he left it at that. But I think again, true friends see each other as very close, see each other as holy, as diamonds, as people who have angels saying to them, grow, grow. And in a way, if we're able to truly listen to one another, to forgive one another, to criticize one another lovingly like Kohanim, to respect one another, but more importantly, to see the good in the other, the angel in the other, then our friendships can then blossom and no doubt inspire many others to truly embrace friendship as it should be, as it is described in our sources. Thank you very much. I do want to take questions, comments, disagreements. Please, feel free to do so.
If you have a question, raise your hand. I'll bring this over to you, and you'll just hold it like this. Gentlemen?
But they won't be on the video, right?
No, they will not be on the video.
Okay, yeah.
There you go, mate.
Thank you. I have a comment.
Yes.
I noticed that what I've started working on, whenever I'm ready to, something irks me and gets me, is I get curious about what it is that's irking me or getting me. Rather than lash at you, I say, hey, I check in myself, like, where's this coming from?
Right.
You know, why does this bother me? So I have found that to be such a nice place to go before I respond. So.
Right, very good. That's right. Yeah, you know, you remind me, so I grew up in France, and in France there's many children's stories composed by La Fontaine, who was a great poet. But one of his stories speaks of this bird, that wherever he flew, and I've told this story before, but wherever he flew in the world, it stunk. He had a terrible smell around him. And he didn't understand where it was coming from. He thought it was from people, he thought it was from places, and he traversed oceans and mountains. And finally, after 5 years, he realized that he had a rotten piece of apple right here. So he took it off, and he was happy ever after. But in a way, I think it's true for people. Sometimes, everywhere they go, it stinks. They don't realize that they have a rotten piece of apple right here. So you have to look at yourself first, and then, yeah. Anyone else?
Questions, comments?
Yes.
So a practical application of friendship. I have a number of friends who are birthday people. Do you know what a birthday person is?
No.
So they care about the birthdays so much they can probably tell you all your birthdays, all your kids' birthdays, all your this birthdays, and they care about when their birthday is, that special things are expected on that birthday. If you're not a birthday person, and you have a friend like that, it can put a tremendous amount of pressure on the friendship. So
Sure.
I'd just like you to comment on how, being friends with somebody, with people who have expectations that, that you're trying to meet or not trying to meet or whatever.
Right. That's a good question. What if you have a birthday person in a friendship and the other is not a birthday person? Who doesn't remember necessarily all of the birthdays of your children and so on and so forth. Well, I will say, what we've said more or less, and that is that friendship is not an exchange of services. So it's not I'll do the service for you and you'll do the service for me. Friendship really is recognizing that the other is another, yet cherishing the other for being that other. That's what friendship is about. And therefore, if the other doesn't necessarily have the same way of collecting birthdays, or the same memory maybe of remembering birthdays, then I have to respect the other for who he or she is. I don't expect a service back. If that's a service I provide, I don't expect it back. I incorporate, I think, ingredient number 2, right? It was the ingredient of respect. I respect you for who you are. And I know that being a friend, you'll provide to me services that I won't be able to give back to you. So I remember birthdays, and you remember, I don't know, my favorite color. It doesn't matter. But, you know, respect, I think, has to come into play in cases like that. Because it's not an exchange of services. Yes?
Rega. Hold it like this, too.
You were saying love and respect. I can just remember, you know, as a child, my mother saying to me so many times, I love you always, I don't like you very much right now. That, you know, that there is a difference between
Right.
love and
Between
like.
love and like.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah, love and respect. Right. Very good. Very good. Excellent. Yeah, whatever.
I think, Rabbi, from the discussion this evening, one can come to the conclusion that it's not so easy to be a good friend.
Right.
And that maybe we're very fortunate if in our lifetime we have found one or two or three people that we can call good friends, because I think many of us have a lot of friends who are really good acquaintances.
Right. Right.
But not really true soulful friends.
Beautiful. That's right. I would wholeheartedly agree with that. That's correct. We'd be fortunate if we had one or two or three good friends based on our conversation tonight. And I would say that I think that's really all you need. You don't really need more than that. Yes, Hannah.
That's something that I was thinking about what she said, is like, what is a good friend, what is a friend, and what is an acquaintance?
Right.
You know, what's the difference?
But I think, again, a good friend incorporates all of these 5 ingredients. An acquaintance doesn't necessarily have these ingredients, have any of them, or maybe just has some of them. A Facebook friend is not a friend, period. Zev. Okay. And then we have another, Zev, and then we have another question there.
Okay, like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to follow up on what that lady just said. My mother, she's rest in peace, always said to me, you only need one really good friend in life.
Right. Right.
And that's it.
That's right. Very good. Yes, her mother would say to her that all you really need is one good friend in life. Right?
Just
That's
like
what you
that.
said. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've heard a lot in the news over the last several years that men often don't have a lot of friends. A lot of the crimes that are committed are by men who are loners, who do not have friends.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's so much easier for women to have friends as opposed to men?
That's a good question. I think that's a whole different class. The differences between men and women. But I'm gonna answer in that way, and that is that I think it's rooted in the creation of Adam and Eve. God created Adam out of dust, right? Remember that? Eve was not created out of dust. Eve really was created from flesh, from a rib or from flesh, from something that is substantial. I think women are much more secure than men. They know who they are. They're a piece of rib, so to speak, right? There's presence there. Men do not know who they are. Men are very insecure. It takes a long time and a lot of time for many men to overcome that insecurity. And when you're insecure, it's much, much harder to become vulnerable to friendship. We're made out of dust. What can we do? We don't know who we are. That's right. Yes, Orit.
Do you think friendships can have an expiration date? Because if we're supposed to be growing as people, can we grow apart from friends?
That's a very good question. So, can friendships have an expiration date? Because if people change, then friendships can change too. Or if people grow, then friendships can grow too. I would say that the easy answer is no. And I'll tell you why. And I think that we related to that in point number 1. And that's because a true friendship is a soul-to-soul friendship. Souls don't change. Souls don't grow. Souls are a part of God. The rest, the body changes, the psychology of the person changes, the rest of the person changes, but not the actual diamond, right? Not the actual soul. On the other hand, there are friendships that can incorporate those 5 ingredients, and they're not fully soul-to-soul relationships. And if these are the types of friendships that you're speaking about, then yes, then if you grow, then those friendships can expire eventually. But if I'm a true friend, I connected completely to the essence of the person. That essence doesn't change. I would use the cliche of Mark Twain, who says that the 2 types of friendships, friendships that are based on frequency and friendships that are based on intensity. And the latter is the stronger. That's what he says. Friendships that are based on intensity are much stronger. So if it's a soul-to-soul friendship, the intensity is so strong that it doesn't allow for the friendship to ever expire. If it's a frequency type of friendship, then yes, of course, but then it's not really a true type of friendship. I hope I answered your question. Okay, yes, please. One second. Yeah.
I just have a different point of view of this services to services. I think that if you have a friend and birthdays mean so much to them, that it doesn't cost anything to give them something that will make them feel better. I mean,
Right.
it's not
But
services.
the expectation of them from you that you too should remember all of their birthdays, all of their grandchildren's birthdays or whatever, I think that's not a realistic expectation. Would you agree?
Yeah, but I would tell that person that. I wouldn't
You would
just,
tell them that?
Yeah,
Fine,
I would.
fine, that's fine.
But
Yeah.
if they're such a good friend and that's important to that one person,
right?
I would think that I would, or
No,
someone would go
absolutely,
out of their
and
way just for
friends
that one
should-
person. Yeah, to
Right.
make them happy.
Right. No, I agree. I agree. I think absolutely friends also should be able to communicate with one another frankly, right? And say, well, don't expect this from me.
Right. Okay.
But
I didn't need you to
expectations have-
agree. I just felt like it's that other
Right.
person's language.
No,
That's all.
excellent. That's right. That's right.
I'm still waiting for my birthday present.
Very good. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much again to Amy. Thank you for spearheading this class. Such a pleasure.